So their advice was, if you buy low, you'll always win. That was like pretty much it. Like, buy low, you'll be safe. So to me, that meant half off. So life was kind of crazy because I went to 3 kids kind of quickly, all under the age of 5.
Nice.
And, at that time we went on one income. And so it was like, oh my God, this is our sink or swim.
Right.
Like, how are we going to pay these bills? And I just remember being like, there has to be a solution. I was working full time at Capital One, and I was just struggling. I was like, really staying up at night. And I'm like, I've seen my dad invest. I've seen things on like the fortune builders were coming to town,
right.
Went to their free 2-day, seminar to sell you on the bigger one that I couldn't afford.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask, you didn't get sucked into the bigger, or like you didn't find a way to afford the bigger one?
If I had a way, I would have done it.
Got it.
Probably. Because, at that time, you're like a sink or swim. You were desperate. So it was a very struggle, hustle mentality. So at that time, I actually met someone on the local real estate group. What was it? It's the local RIA.
Yeah, okay.
So it was ran by someone different. And, I just went and I met a bunch of people and I asked them to lunch. And I'm like, let me hear your story.
Right.
Like, it was so inspiring. And they're like, if I can do it, you can do it.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I was so inspired. So their advice was, if you buy low, you'll always win. That was like pretty much it. Like, buy low, you'll be safe. So to me, that meant half off.
So
it's easy.
I need to learn more about this. So
Okay.
when you're like, you said your dad had the investor mindset,
Yes.
right? And you saw him buy a house. So he's got a W-2 job.
Yes.
And then as he's moving around, he's buying and he's keeping houses, right?
Yeah.
Is he only keeping the houses that he lives in, or is he buying
Yes.
other investments too?
No, only
Okay.
the one that he's moving into.
Do you know how he got that mentality? Do you know how he learned that or where he learned that from?
Yes. He grew up very poor. So, he made every nickel and dollar count. And when he got a job, he was able to learn about banking. So he was the guy who, researched everything.
Okay.
He's proud to call himself a geek, and he loves numbers. Like, he could tell you the day he learned about negative numbers, which is as such an engineer, right? So he just studied and he did everything. And he taught me, like, when you have that, Capital One job, max out your 401 contributions. Like, he was always researching with what he had. And
That's awesome. So growing up, were you focused on, like, was he specifically teaching you about assets, liabilities, things like that as you were growing up, or is it more when you were an adult, he was like, hey, let's talk?
He would always mention it and try to teach me about stocks or different things. But to be honest, I was not
because you're
interested.
a kid, right?
Yeah, I was like, okay, that sounds great. But actually, my parents ended up moving back. So they actually left when I was 16 and I moved in with a friend's family. So because I was in high school, at that time I was very much established, so it was interesting. So they ended up leaving, and then, I got a job very quickly.
Right.
So for me, it was like, now I'm learning life lessons very quick. I went and got a job, Capital One. Capital One actually contributed to my community college. And I did get my paralegal degree, which I ended up never using it because, I had a job at Capital One with benefits. And but I've used that knowledge, with contracts and negotiation, just different things with that degree. But it's been a stepping stone. So really, I wasn't interested until I hit the struggle. There was no, I was comfortable, I think.